guys, welcome to Goblincast. On this episode, we are going to be talking about heavy metal, and more specifically, I think the different kind of genres of heavy metal and how anybody kind of gets into heavy metal. So, I'm Ryan.
This is Colin.
And so, Colin, what was your experience with getting into heavy metal?
So, thinking back on it, my experience with heavy metal would have to be long ago. But I didn't really get into music as I am really now until maybe just a few years ago. The later parts of my early adult life, if that's can that be a time? The early parts of the
let's go with that, early adult life.
Okay, so in the early parts of the late, or never mind,
sure,
prior to that, my brother tells me that many years ago, we were at a carnival, and they were playing "Stairway to Heaven," and according to my brother, this song really resonated with me, and I'm like 4 or 5 or something like that. So I have no recollection of this whatsoever. I don't remember anything of the sorts. And then from that point...
Which, by the way, my question about that, which part of the, 7.5 minute Stairway to Heaven resonated with you as a child? Was it the wheedly guitar solo, or was it the sort of, fluty bits about, about, fairies and hedges and stuff?
God, I have no idea. I'm drawing a blank. And I never didn't draw a blank about it. Every time we talk about it, my brother's just like, yeah, man, a long time ago, you were really into Stairway. I'm just like, yeah, you say that. Why do you say that? It's like, sure, I like the song. Yeah. Sure, I like the band, but I don't remember liking it then.
This experience seems to have left a more indelible mark on him than you, it seems.
Yeah, it seems that way. But the case was, he tells me that. But then, from that point forward, through most of my childhood, music was really was no big thing to me. We listened to the rap and R&B stations, and it wasn't until there were two factors that got me really into music. The first of which was video games, specifically Super Nintendo scores from games like Donkey Kong Country and Zelda, Kirby.
God,
I
Chrono
really
Trigger, though.
And Contra. And then I guess I started paying closer attention to music in television and whatnot, and that, of course, led me to MTV. Because at the time, MTV was watchable, if you can say that.
Right. Kind of.
It was around the time that they were doing Ba With the Ba and
oh God, Total Request Live.
Yeah, Freak on a Leash. Did It All for the Nookie.
Limp Bizkit, very important.
Scar Tissue.
Right. My Own Worst Enemy by Lit.
Yeah. And Miserable by Lit.
Sure.
And then, what was it? There was another one. She's So High. High Above Me, like Cleopatra. Yeah, right, that's the one.
Yeah. Which, I mean, of course, I think that it's easy to look back on MTV now and go, oh, back in the days when MTV was watchable and great.
Yeah. Be cool with MTV. You remember that shit?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God.
And then what happened from there is actually quite interesting. So
from the late '90s, sort of rap rock, like butt rock.
Well, it was like, when was I listening to it? Because I Disappear out of that too.
Oh sure.
And that was like my first real hint of Metallica. Now, my brother will tell me that he had the Black Album and he used to play that, and I really liked it. But again, I have no recollection.
I remember the riff from I Disappear sounded like a very indignant cat, like just constantly. This cat is disappointed with James Hetfield.
Yeah.
As are we all, really.
There's a part right at the end of the bridge, or maybe just before the final chorus. There's a part where James threatens the cameraman. He just you can see his left arm just fully extended. He points at him, says something. It's like 4 syllables, and then he goes into there. It's like do you feel me? But right before that, talking before that. He says something to the cameraman. Yeah, it's just
yeah. Which I love Metallica as a formative metal experience, because and again I remember I Disappear. I feel like the lyrics are a blur except for hey hey hey, and that's it. That's just
here I go now,
and I'm eating. And that's the funny thing with James Hetfield is like the little James Hetfieldisms. There's always yeah,
damn it,
hey, yeah. He's got a million of them, just little James Hetfield noises.
Okay, so then I had Metallica, and so I started watching MTV because I had a friend named Dan in most of my elementary school years, and he got me into MTV. He also got me into WWF.
Right.
And so I was, it was around the time right before SmackDown showed up, and we're watching Sunday Night Heat. And Sunday Night Heat started doing all these different format things because viewership was going down or something. So they would turn it into just like a recap show for a little while. And that's where I got introduced to even more bands. And that's the first time that I heard Stupefy from Disturbed. And I, despite how I feel about the music now, I can't doubt that they shaped my direction going forward for a few years there. Because from Disturbed, I got into Slipknot. And then from Slipknot, I got into Mudvayne. And then eventually I got into Killswitch. And then from there, the floodgates were open.
Yeah.
So I started listening to a lot of heavier stuff, and then I found Tool, and then my brain was really starting to resonate with this shit.
Right.
And around the time when I really started getting into Tool, listening to them so religiously, my brother showed me Dream Theater, and then I knew that I had to start doing something about this music thing. So I fired up GarageBand when I got a Mac my sophomore year of college, and I started dicking around with loops. And I just started making compositions. I mean, granted, they were ridiculously long. My first one was 16 minutes. My second one was 14, and it took a long time to get a song that was only 4 minutes. My problem is being brief. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to abbreviate things. Just gotta make a song longer than it needs to be. I think I've gotten better at that. I've gotten more.
I mean, like usually your tracks I've noticed are usually about like 8 minutes to 10 minutes.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's prog metal, so I mean, yeah.
Well, I should hope that no part overstays its welcome. No song is too overdrawn. Oh, jeez, I didn't mean to do that.
Drawn because your name's Colin. Drawn. But it's funny that you mentioned the Disturbed thing though, because it, it's easy to look back on it now. Like for example, is that? I don't want to steal your thunder. Was that your Full Metal experience or?
Well, I mean, really, because that's what it became. It's after Dream Theater. That's when I started looking for different things. I started looking instead of what I was looking for before, which was something familiar or something that was really hard hitting, like exclusively. Instead, I started looking to branch out. I was looking for ideas that went in different places. I like to be taken on journeys. I wasn't a huge fan of long songs until I got into Tool, and then when I got into Tool, it's harder for me to like shorter songs. So I mean, it was sort of getting on the other side of the fence, I guess. But yeah, since then, I've just been listening to music, always constantly looking for more music. I would say that being a metalhead at first, when I first started really getting into it, I was a metalhead at first, and then since then, it's not that I've mellowed out, it's that I've branched out to the point where I just a music fan. Just give me music that is challenging or interesting, and I'll be happy.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because like for instance, my brother, who also is still really into a lot of butt rock, so. But he's also in the military, butt rock, and but I feel like I've known a lot of military guys, and Jesus Christ, do they love some butt rock?
Yeah.
And with my brother, I try to tip him off to different artists that that I'm like. For example, there's this a hip hop group going right now called Run the Jewels, and it's these two guys, LP and Killer Mike, and it is some of the most. Yeah, Killer Mike, it's fucking incredible. Like, and like I'm really in.
He's got some things.
No. Yeah, no. Like Run the Jewels. It's funny because there was this Ben Schwartz from Parks and Rec and other stuff. He was he tweeted like, "Well, I'm at the bank, but and Run the Jewels came on my headphones, and now I feel like I have to rob the bank." And that's and I've kind of gotten to the point at 28 years old where I can't be bothered to explain to people why hip hop is great or why any genre is great. Like, and that's the thing about heavy metal is that. When good heavy metal, it's like pro wrestling, okay?
Okay.
I think because when it's good, it is so good. When it's bad, it is fucking
so
irredeemable.
Bad, yeah.
yeah. And it's well, and it's funny. All right, so with metal, my experience with metal was that starting out, I like growing up in the Chicagoland area, the alternative station Q101 would. Play a lot of kind of heavier music, and that was my first thing. It's not quite heavy metal, but it quickly led into heavy metal. I still remember being about 8 years old and crawling out of bed to watch MTV at about 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And, and I remember the video for Closer by Nine Inch Nails came on.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I mean, and now at the time, of course, like I was a tiny white bread Jesus kid who primarily knew about Newsboys and DC Talk, Sandy Patty. Because my mom, I love my mom. She has the lamest taste in music of anybody I know. It's incredible. Like Celine Dion, like it's any cool music I've ever had, or I sort of had to come across myself. And I just remember watching the video for Closer at about 8 years old, and just it scrambled my fucking brains because
a Jesus kid's brain might get scrambled by that.
What? Oh God, yeah. Well, especially because again, I'm a bisexual guy, and it was watching that video as a small child. It freaked me the fuck out because I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to see Trent Reznor naked or be Trent Reznor. or both. Be him and hang out naked. And so, and then musically, just the sounds coming out of this song, it sounded like something that played in the bowels of sexy hell. And at 8 years old, and then just the da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, and so from there, I kind of, a couple of years passed, and Colin, our mutual friend Rocco, I met him in 7th grade. And going back to the pro wrestling thing, the reason we've been close friends ever since, we both happened to wear the exact same D-Generation X t-shirt on the first day of 7th grade.
Yeah. That's
in homeroom. Yeah. And so, of course, like that, best friends ever since. And he was the one who got me into Metallica, and I remember he gave me these little mixtapes full of, sorry, my dog's being a dick. These mixtapes full of, like, songs from the first 3 Metallica albums, and if I could think of a watershed moment for metal taking the top of my head off and me going, oh, this is cool, it was the instrumental track Orion from
that song is perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, and specifically the one moment that I think about that moment in the song now, and it still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. There's this quiet bit where Cliff Burton is just playing this do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and then the drums come in very, like, gradually louder, like, ba 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 ba, and then, yeah, this guitar harmony between Kirk Hammett and James Hetfield, where they both bend the note at the same time, like, da, and I remember, like, that moment felt hallucinogenic when I was, like, 12 or 13, and as a medium, heavy metal is one of those things that I think is very, very easy to write off as just being this sort of sweaty adolescent
and it's seriously unfortunate that that's what it is in the public eye.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's funny because because I keep going back to this because I'm also doing a wrestling podcast, and I'm kind of writing. Side note, I'm writing some essays for a book about pro wrestling with some people, and I'm writing about bad guy wrestlers, and it's fascinating. But I think wrestling and heavy metal both have a similar thing where when you say pro wrestling or you say heavy metal to somebody that's not really into it, instantly I think their brain conjures a very specific image of the thing.
Yeah. and it's highly inaccurate for the most part.
Well, for the most part, I mean, like, sure, Attitude Era wrestling was basically what people think wrestling is. It's just god-awful. But with heavy metal, it's this, I don't know, like, what's your, like, how do you see heavy metal? Like, what space do you see heavy metal occupying?
A space for it to occupy? How do you mean?
Well, I mean, because I think every genre and every convention and medium, I feel like they all have their niche. Like, they all have this one thing that they do really, really well. Like,
metal is, I think, equal parts power and aggression. Mm-hmm. Just on the whole, I think those are the two biggest
except
things
for, like,
about
stoner
the
metal,
genre.
maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I would say that that's more on the aggression side than the power side, simply because the well, is it aggression? I don't know.
Yeah, stoner metal seems a bit too laid back.
Metal. Yeah, it is really laid back, but I don't know.
Well,
I mean, because metal is basically heavy blues.
Yeah, basically. Well, I mean, of course, it goes back to, like, I mean, as with every single form of American music, generally it was ripped off from black people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it generally, like, think of any popular form of music, it goes back to the blues, which came out of, you know, gospel and you know, jazz, and it's... So with heavy metal, and I think that's why you can, with certain bands like Black Sabbath and sort of the early British bands like Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, you can kind of see the DNA of how it came out of the blues.
Mm-hmm. Most assuredly with Black Sabbath.
Right. And it's so funny to me, by the way, with genres, that, like, with heavy metal, technically, Cattle Mutilation and Bon Jovi are both technically heavy metal. Like, and to say that, you know, and it's such a huge thing to encompass, just saying heavy metal, like that's supposed to be a specific form.
And it's become so much more these days. It's become just... They've blurred the lines of genres a lot. And there's been new subgenres that have come out. I don't know how familiar you are with gent. I think that's how you say it.
Gent.
Yeah,
I am not.
It's spelled D-J-E-N-T. And it's essentially supposed to be like an onomatopoeia for the sound that the guitar makes. So it's sort of jijin, jijin.
Oh, so like a guitar, so like a breakdown, just extended.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's a really low-tuned guitar. It really has to do with the mix, because the guitar is tuned really, really low. There's a lot of low end, and in most cases, the bass is actually mixed above it, on top of the guitar. Christ. So there's more treble in the bass. I mean, it's a really interesting song, or a really interesting sound. I think you could look at bands like Periphery or Animals as Leaders, and these are sort of like the front runners of what gent has become. But nowadays, when I'm looking to find some mixing tutorials, and I'm looking for something more specific, so if it's like a metal mixing tutorial, then more often than not, I see that people are doing gent music, because I hate to say it, it's easy. It's just muted chugging for the most part. Now, it's really intricate muted chugging, but it makes you sound just like
concerto for Paul
everyone
muted
else.
guitar.
It's hard to tell one gent song from one gent band to another gent song to another gent band.
To be fair, with the it's hard to tell one song from another thing. Like doom metal and stoner metal. I remember I went and saw the band Sun with 2 N's and a circle and a bunch of parentheses. I went to a Sun concert back in 2012, and I thought it was a joke because I went there with some friends, and these fucking guys, they come on stage in druid robes, and the lights go dim. They've got their fucking Spinal Tap fog machine going. I sound like I hate it, and that's actually not true. It was at the time I was angry that I paid money. And so they've got their fucking spooky Halloween, fog machine going, and they stand there, and this guy plays this fucking druid, plays a chord on his guitar, and it's soaked in chorus, and just wah, and he lets the fucking chord ring out until all static noise has died away, and then he waits like a full minute, and then wah again. And at this point, I was livid that my buddy Megan had dragged had dragged me and a friend to this concert because I'm like, you know, like, if you're gonna come out in druid robes and you're not gonna cover fucking Stonehenge by Spinal Tap, like, how dare you? Yeah, just, oh god, I could still hear that chord in my fucking nightmares. But actually though, like, with Sun, it's one of those bands that, I think it's fascinating because how do we classify music? Like, how do we decide what's music and what isn't? You know what I mean? Like, a guy in a druid robe, like, strumming a G chord every minute or so, technically music.
Anything with rhythm, really. I mean, if you really want to go back, like, where music started, like, where it really, really started, like, people just used to sing. It's not like, oh, I can't sing, this person can't sing. It's like, if you can't sing, then you don't want to sing. Singing used to be something that everybody did. Music used to be something that everyone did. Like, tribes in tribal places, they would do tribal dances and
doing
singing
tribal,
and shit.
Doing tribal things. Well, and it's funny, though, because, like, the Dalai Lama, I remember years ago, they thought it would be funny to play some black metal for the Dalai Lama. And so I think they played, like, Gorgoroth for him. And they played some Gorgoroth for the Dalai Lama. And he just kind of shrugs and points out, I mean, it's just rhythms. It's identical to anything in any discotheque. It just sounds a little harsher.
Yeah.
Which, man, fucking, yeah, I feel like the Dalai Lama is just unflappable. Unfuckwithable. You play him some like Borknagar, and he's like, I've heard worse. But actually, that's funny, though, with the black metal thing, because I remember, alright, so when I was a Jesus kid, I kind of stopped with the Jesus thing when I was about 18. And up until that point, it was weird because I was really into heavy metal, but I also was vaguely convinced that it was evil.
So you're into the evil.
Absolutely. And when you're a kid, you know, there's nothing more exciting than when you feel like you're doing something bad.
Yeah.
And there was this Christian metal label called Tooth and Nail Records. And again, like, there's some alternate universe where I'm, like, a cool youth pastor with, like, the soul patch and the fucking, you know, earring. The left one, you know.
The Nightcrawler.
Yeah. And so I remember back in the day, like, when I was a kid, I would bring home Christian black metal. It does exist.
Yeah, I know it exists.
Yeah, there's this band called Extol that I would listen to, and it was great because my mom, of course, who was again, bless her, she's the best. I love my mom. She, I think, threw out no fewer than 3 copies of The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails when I was a kid. Because she would throw it out, and I would just keep fucking bringing it into the house. The same thing happened with, like, Mortal Kombat a bunch of times. But, you know, I would play this Christian black and death metal because it was indistinguishable from fucking Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel.
Yeah.
And my mom would go, "What are you listening to?" Yeah, and I'd go, I'm listening to Living Sacrifice, and show her some lyrics. And she can't fucking understand the... Like, she can't... You can't fucking tell what they're saying.
Right. So you really, they could be saying anything. It could just be a recipe for cookies.
Yeah, I mean, also, you're familiar with the band Umlaut, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that one song that was just like... They sang the ABC song, just like... and it was, you know... But there's the funny thing, though, with brutality in metal, alright? So death and black metal... Give us a rundown of how death and black metal happened.
How death and black metal happened?
Yeah.
As far as the history of death and black metal goes, that's, I mean...
aside from just Tampa, Florida, and also Scandinavia are dark and horrible places for different reasons.
Yeah, right. I was just going to go with the story of mayhem.
Sure.
And
yeah. So for the benefit of those who may not know the wonderful fable. You know, the Aesop of Count Grishnak and Euronymous.
Yeah, okay, so there was this band called Mayhem that was made up of these 2 characters that, you know, they looked like black metal people, you know how they do the face paint and everything, and they, you know, would habitually burn churches and crosses and stuff, and they would just basically be, you know, your typical nihilist of, you know, it's hard to think that these guys were actually friends or liked things or smiled.
Right.
So one of them went by Euronymous as his name. The other one went by Dead, and he's dead.
Which side note, when I told Christina about how Dead died,
Yeah.
and I prefaced it with, and anyway, so the lead singer, Dead, and it still destroys her to this day if you preface anything with the lead singer, Dead.
Yeah. So he shot himself with a shotgun at like point blank range, and Euronymous came home to dead, and just moved around some things, took a picture of it, used it on an album cover. No shit, it's a real thing. It's a real album cover of a man with his brains hanging out of his head.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
because and didn't he make a stew out of the brains?
there's where the fable is, because
Yeah, did he actually do that?
I don't know if he actually did that. I think the important thing is that so you have Burzum, and he allegedly took this guy out to the woods, feeling upset about this whole thing, and stabbed him 17 times. So now both of the guys from Mayhem are dead.
And of course, side note, and there were rumors that the drummer Hellhammer made a necklace out of the skull fragments from the death scene.
They actually did a really interesting thing. I've never seen the show Bones, but I told this story to who was my friend at the time, a coworker at Target, and he said, this story actually sounds familiar. So he told me about this episode of Bones called Mayhem on a Cross, and so I watched it on Netflix, Jesus. And I have no predisposition to the show whatsoever. Sure. But I watched this, and I was just going okay, yeah, it is just a love letter to this story that is the stained history of black metal.
Right. Well, and then so of course Count Grishnak fell, and there are different accounts of how or why this happened, but Count Grishnak, the bassist, real name is Varg Vikernes, and he which I'm not sure which is uglier, Count Grishnak or his actual name.
Burzum isn't particularly attractive of a name either.
Or an attractive group, really. Yeah. And so Count Grishnak stabbed Euronymous, the guitar player, because, and according to different accounts, he felt that Euronymous had surpassed him on the evil scale, and he was... And this is the thing that I feel like people need to know about black metal guys, is that they are sad, weird little goblins who...
Goblincast.
Yeah, Goblincast. There you go. And they do, and they do this thing where I've been to black metal shows, and none of these people ever smile, and it's such a funny thing because everybody's standing there in corpse paint, trying to look as unimpressed and unhappy with being at this concert, trying to be the most unhappy person at this concert, and it's fucking wild.
The idea that they went there to have a good time.
Makes me think of Trent Reznor at a concert recently. It was yeah, did you come here to dance, have a good time? Yeah, well, that was the last fucking band. We're here to have a bad time. And he does this weird dad dance. He's old now. God, I love Trent. But no, so, with black metal, and then also Varg Vikernes, because apparently in Sweden they're all just reasonable. He went to jail, and he's, they were kind of oh, you're going to jail forever. You killed a dude. So he's in jail, I think, for he's on a 20-year sentence. He broke out of Swedish jail and led the authorities a merry fucking chase across the Swedish countryside. They got this on video, it was just yakety sax all the way, Swedish countryside. And then they captured him, and then he went right back to Swedish jail like he'd never left.
Right, and they let him continue his music.
Recording with a synthesizer.
Yeah, he did all of his electronica shit in that time, but I mean,
well, and it's also fascinating because he went on this weird neo-Nazi jag.
Yeah.
And then also he was I'm a Satanist, and then next week it would be I'm an Odinist, and he's a guy who just should name every song on every album, "Oh God, please pay attention to me."
Yeah.
And that's Varg Vikernes, mostly.
There's a distinction between... There's a couple of distinctions between black metal and death metal that a lot of people don't really understand. They would have just said that if they're screaming in it, if it's that guttural noise for vocals...
And if the drums are going bada 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 bada.
Right. Now typically the drums that go bada bada bada, those can probably be... I mean, truth be told, in any genre of metal, typically in black and death at the forefront. But one of my favorite and easiest distinctions between black and death is the style of vocal. So with death metal, it's usually on the lower end. It's a more guttural and visceral sound, whereas on the with black metal, a lot of times it's akin to shrieking.
Yeah, it's screechier. It sounds very like a band of angry hobgoblins trying to break into your house with musical instruments.
Yeah, that about sums it up. And the other thing is monotony. That's important in
Sure.
black metal. Not just a matter of songs lasting very, very, very long, but the idea that they just drone, and that's what they're going for. That's actually what they're trying to do. I mean, if you listen to something from Varg on, God, I can't pronounce any of the names of his albums, but just he'll do a riff, really simple riff, 40 bars of it.
Good God.
And then change it just a little bit, 40 more bars. 10 minutes later, a new riff. It's just...
Jesus.
Just the monotony of it. That's what they're going for, because that's depressing. It's depressing to not have change. It's depressing...
Because how like life, we're all wading through a gray expanse of just repetition, and that's,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
death metal likes to have fun with it. Even if it says it doesn't, it does. There are guitar solos. There are bits that change. Sometimes they'll even have clean vocals.
Which is, especially like cattle decap has, cattle decapitation for reasonable people who don't feel the need to abbreviate shit.
Right.
Yeah, like they've got the one guy, or like not that they're either death or black metal, but like they're suspend 3 inches of blood.
Oh yeah.
They've got the one guy who does the like, and then they've got this other guy who
It does a more impressive Axl Rose.
And it's so funny though, because like with the falsetto, then we come to King Diamond.
Yep.
And
The
King
man
Diamond,
can't
I
sing.
think, oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. And I love King Diamond for the fact that, you look at a picture of King Diamond, he's got the kind of black metal corpse paint, sort of Lord of Darkness thing going on, and instantly, you look at a picture of him, and it's and I loved, I love doing this. People I know who have never listened to King Diamond, I'll like show them, sort of a YouTube video where it's got a picture, like the video has a picture of King Diamond, and they're expecting like, oh god, this is going to be some growly, awful, brutal thing. Nope.
Oh, it's still brutal.
It's still
decidedly brutal.
But King Diamond comes in with specifically "A Christmas Will Not Go By," in which I will not post "No Presents for Christmas" by King Diamond, purely because the opening line of this destroys me, which is "Christmas time is here again," and he's just screaming about how you're not getting any presents for Christmas, and this is this is heavy metal.
Yeah. People say that one of the biggest draws of King Diamond is his range, and I'm thinking, no, he doesn't have any range. What he has are the extremes. He has the not singing, just kind of yelling at you talk.
Yeah, begin.
Right.
Yeah.
Dancing, the witches dance. and then he has the really high falsetto and nothing in between.
Right. No, it's incredible because like when he tries singing, he sounds like herpes, right? Like you listen to like Abigail, and he's just kind of and he sounds like his voice is trying to like pick your pocket while it's just gross and weird, and it goes from that into this like and
that's what we love.
Oh yeah, that's like if he didn't have the fucking falsetto, I would never listen to King Diamond.
Yeah, right. It's just it's really kind of like for the shock value, and I mean, honest to God, it's good guitar solos. He makes really great riffs. He's a really good songwriter for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not for nothing. Even the God, what was it? His latest album, "Give Me Your Soul," ellipses, please. There were still solid tracks on that, and it was like from 2009, I think, maybe 11. I don't remember.
It's the parentheses that really sell me. Give me your soul, please. Oh my god! But it's so funny though, because like with King Diamond, here's the funny thing, and the crux of the biscuit. you look at Spinal Tap, right, or Death Clock, or any like parody metal band, right?
Lordy.
Yeah, right. And you contrast that with actual metal bands. And I know ultimately that at 15 years old, if I had come across Spinal Tap and they had been an actual band, I would have loved fucking Spinal Tap.
Yeah, that's me and Death Clock.
Yeah, because like you look at like bands like Saxon and Anvil and like Venom, they fucking Venom at war with Satan.
Oh, good.
But you look at a lot of like early metal bands, and like Spinal Tap was basic. It's indistinguishable.
Yeah, I mean they can be just as earnest about that than anybody. So.
Well, yeah, and I think that was watching. And it's funny because you look at a Ronnie James Dio video, which, side note, Ronnie James Dio and Klaus Meine from the Scorpions both had the distinction of being both bald and yet have long frizzy hair.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Just this halo of lint sort of following them around.
Kind of like Hulk Hogan's hair.
Yeah, where he's got the kind of skullet thing going on.
Yeah. Skullet, that's good.
Yeah, there you go. And so, you've got... so with bands like Dio, it's so funny that he's mentioned... And I think that heavy metal, like pro wrestling, the problem comes when people who are not particularly into these things, for very legitimate reasons. I can totally understand why somebody wouldn't really care to sit down and listen to some Bathory when they get off work, or watch pro wrestling. Like, I can, like I love these things, but I understand why somebody wouldn't like it. And I look at so with Ronnie James Dio, a lot of people think that fans are not in on the joke or not in on how fucking ridiculous Dio is, and that is not the case.
Yeah.
Because this guy is just coming in like, "Look out, devil woman, I see thee," and he's just screaming about devil women stealing his soul and fucking, dragons and no, sorry, not fucking dragons, but
that's if what he's saying actually has some if it holds any water. I mean, because we look at one of his most famous songs, we look at the lyrics of Holy Diver, and you can see the stripes, but he's clean. Oh, don't you see what I mean? No, Dio, we don't. We don't care.
Right. It doesn't matter. Well, and it's so funny because Holy Diver, no lyric in that song makes sense with any consecutive lyric.
Or you're a dancer.
It's like it was written by 16 different guys in different rooms who all made a collage after they'd written one line of it. And it's great because it's like, Holy Diver, you've been down too long in the Midnight Sea. So already we come to a conflict. What the fuck is the Midnight Sea? And then, what's becoming of me? Like, so he's already all of a sudden put himself into the song as a narrator, and then riding a tiger, but there are truths that are harder than steel, and there's wheels, and it's so funny. So with Dio, and even he's acknowledged, like, yeah, this is goofy as hell. I come out, and this is in the 80s, and he was like, yeah, I come out with a giant, like, mechanical dragon, and the guitar player has a lightning battle with the dragon with his guitar, and we hide our keyboard player off stage because we're ashamed of him, and and so he was absolutely in on how ridiculous this thing was.
Yeah, most assuredly.
And there, to be sure, there is a difference between sort of goofy metal like Dio or Dream Evil or like most power metal bands. There's a difference between that and I think a lot of sort of prog metal and I hate to say this, but like sort of serious metal.
Serious metal.
Well,
I take metal pretty seriously.
Well, yeah, but like metal that takes itself seriously, which can also be hilarious if it's bad.
Oh yeah.
Like if it takes itself seriously, then it's But I think that if you're into heavy metal, necessarily you have to acknowledge certain things about it. Metal guys, and it's that funny thing of like, I adore metal, and I hate going to metal shows because I hate a lot of metal fans.
Yeah, I never liked the label metalhead. It just didn't feel like it suited me.
Right. Oh, wait, hold on one moment. Tinkerbell! Asshole, quit it. My dog's a dick. One moment.
one. There.
Okay.
In the meantime, I could make... Oh, okay, he's back.
But yeah, so I think that being into heavy metal, it's one of those things where I remember I went to go see Ozfest back in 2005.
Sometime.
Yeah, that was ages
10
ago.
years ago.
And that was one of my first, and it's funny though, because my first ever metal concert was 2002. I went and saw Scorpions, Whitesnake, and Dokken.
That's a hell of a first metal concert.
Right, and it's so funny because the way that I got into hair metal, like Dokken, right, and the way that I got into hair metal was that the Schaumburg Public Library, in Schaumburg, Illinois, you could check out CDs, and this was of course before file sharing had really become much of a thing, and before the internet, before YouTube. And I would check out albums. I remember specifically the album Savage Amusement by Scorpions. And listening to it and just feeling nostalgic for a decade that if I had lived through it, I would have probably hated. Because, you look at the 80s and you're like, oh man, I love spandex and big hair. And then Reagan was president during that shit. And if you had...
God damn it!
And so going to see, Scorpions and Whitesnake and Dokken, and it was so funny because I feel like I felt like I was the youngest person at this show at age 15. Because this was in 2002, and they were well past their prime at this point.
Oh right, yeah, okay, that was your first show, and then you went to Ozfest in 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I feel like with metal, necessarily, do you ever feel like you're being kind of indulgent with certain bands?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because they release an album and you're like, God bless.
No, I mean, sometimes. It's... I get almost all of my metal news from just metal-archives.org or com. I don't know. I call it... It's the Encyclopedia Metallum.
Right.
That's where I find out what albums are coming out and how I get into new bands, and I totally judge bands by their names.
Oh, sure.
That's how I discovered that... God, what was it? It was Hate Vomit a couple of years ago.
That's right. I remember
with
Hate Vomit.
What was
Drown
and
Drown and Vomit?
Live. It was like it was Die and Hate, Drown and Vomit.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. But it's so funny though because again you look at Gwar and
or Hate Beat.
You're right. Nobody that's listening to Hate Vomit or Gwar is also not in on the joke. And if they're not in on the joke, stay very far away from me if you're taking this seriously.
Yeah. Right.
So
Gwar.
Oh god. And Gwar is one of those bands. I went and saw Gwar back in 2008, and right. Oh good lord, giant inflatable dick on stage, spraying fake semen and blood everywhere, and
fucking
great, just fantastic. And so, and of course this is in Tennessee, and we all get back in the car, drenched in fake blood, and we go to a Waffle House, and we walk in, we sit down covered in fake blood. Waitress doesn't bat an eye. She gives us our hash browns. She says we look nice. She goes on with her night. It's 3 a.m. She doesn't give a shit. And Waffle House waitresses, by the way, are impossible. They cannot be phased. They have seen the worst dregs of humanity. They have seen the pimples on the ass of humanity because they work at Waffle House at 3 a.m.
Some point to that. I want to say that I earned my horns at this particular show. In Myrtle Beach, we went and saw Mastodon and Deathclaw and the House of Blues. And it was me and a bunch of kids from my school. My buddy Billy, he's kind of a metal historian, and he's really learned in the ways of
the
rock
metal
and the history and blah,
right.
blah, blah. And we're in the front of the pit right before Mastodon showed up, and we're talking about the full body headbang and how you won't hurt your neck if you throw your whole body into the headbanging motion.
Right.
And then there's this guy that's next to us, and he's got a beard like Dumbledore, like Master Roshi, like your favorite bearded
Rasputin,
fucker. And he's got a bandana and sunglasses, and it's so dark in the House of Blues, he's still wearing sunglasses, because fuck it. and he has two beers in the solo cups in one.
Oh, I heard 2 beards and was like, Jesus, did he steal someone else's? He just held some guy down, shaved off his beard, put it on.
He's got like a leather jacket and braids and just this rosy Santa Claus face, but he's a really gaunt Santa Claus. And he hears me and Billy talking, and we see the way that this guy jives. Like, he's just putting everything he's got into every movement. You know, he'll just be a part of the music, and we called him the Metal Sage. And
sure.
After the show really got going, it got into one of the heavier Mastodon tracks. Billy just goes ahead and shoves me because, all right, why not?
Fine.
So I shove him back and then pit. So what ended up happening is I got checked into this very, very large gentleman whose arms were already in front of his chest, so that I landed with both of his hands on my boobs. And then he just thrusted forward, and I smacked into like 7 or 8 people. And for some reason, the force of that was enough to rip off of my body a protrusion of a mole underneath my left boob.
Oh.
So I was bleeding the rest of the concert and didn't know about it until, now we come full circle, went to Waffle House afterwards, where I noticed that I was bleeding, and I performed self-surgery at 3 a.m. in a Waffle House bathroom with nothing but a lighter and a switchblade.
That's, you know, it's like with pornography, how I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. Metal is also like that.
Yeah.
Using a lighter and a switchblade to cut off a mole in a Waffle House bathroom in the wee hours, so fucking metal.
Yeah, I left a piece of me in that Waffle House.
I
bet they would serve it if I didn't put it in the
I've been served worse at Waffle House. That's... Well, and I think my... goddamn, that's gnarly. I think my my moshing story is actually not a metal band. It was a punk band, Leftover Crack. It was in Nashville. It was Leftover Crack, the Green Goblin Project, and Stuck Lucky, which is a ska punk band. And so Leftover Crack is on stage, and they're kind of, you know, doing what they do, and the entire room is just a giant pit. It's just surging and ebbing, and it's terrifying, and it's great. And my friend Quincy is standing in front of me in the pit, and we're both kind of getting shoved and kind of knocked around, and we're basically like a bunch of rocks in a basket being shaken. And he gets thrown backward into me, or I get thrown forward into him. I don't entirely know which, but the back of his head.
Bodies were thrown.
Yeah, exactly. Bodies sort of moved toward each other as bodies are, you know, want to do, in a pit of roiling flesh and sweat. And my mouth was slightly open, and the back of his head just goes kerchunk on my bottom teeth, like a bottle opener, just crunk. And it happened so fast, I didn't know what the fuck happened. I just kind of, oh god, you know, I kind of grabbed my mouth and it hurt. And Quincy kind of got borne away from me in the pit, and I didn't see him after that. The song finishes up, and this is Leftover Crack actually hasn't gone on stage yet. This is for one of the opening. I think this is during the Green Goblin Project's opening set. And my buddy Chris, you know, sort of tugs my my shirt sleeve and goes, "Dude, did you see Quincy?" I'm like, "What? No, we got knocked into each other. Why? I don't know. Where was he?" And he's like, "No, dude, go look at Quincy." And we look at him, and there's like blood gushing out the back of his head. Like, it is bad. And you know, and of course, we're all like 19 and at a hardcore punk show, and showing the sort of sensitivity that 19-year-old punks would show. We all kind of go, "Oh no, look at that! We should go to a hospital after the show. After the show, we all agree after the show. Yeah." And so Quincy is bleeding from the back of the head. We stay for the rest of the concert, and you know, he's in the car, and he's like, "Oh God, guys, I'm dying," and we're in the we stop in the Taco Bell drive-thru on the way to the hospital. Because again, you know, emotionally intelligent 19-year-old punks just very concerned about our friend. Of course, we needed tacos if we're going to the fucking ER.
Yeah.
And so Quincy's in the, you know, they're checking Quincy out, and they're like, they can't believe what he is fucking telling them. They're like a guy bit you, like he bit you. A guy he bit your head. And, he's like, yeah, and they're like, where is this guy? And I'm, like, sitting in the waiting room, like, yeah, and so, of course, they're like, hold still. And Quincy goes, what? And right after that, what? 2 staples to the back of his head to close the wound that my gross, sweaty mouth had made on the back of his head. And so that was my mosh pit moment. And I've had, and that's the funny thing about mosh pits, though. How many have you been in, you would say, a fair number of mosh pits?
A fair number, I guess. Yeah.
They're so weird because how you think a mosh pit will work when you're a kid, very different from how mosh pits actually work.
Oh, yes.
Because...
Yeah, I originally thought it was everybody just jumping kind of in unison, like you see in concerts on television.
Right.
I was so wrong. That's not at all what that is. It's much closer to what the Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher, bringing it back to wrestling. Right. It's much closer to what they did, which is bump butts.
Yeah, they just run at each other and flip around and let's touch butts. It's like, real mosh pits. Let's touch butts.
I got it.
More violent.
I know what it is. It's the scene. It's that last scene right before X-Men starts, where you have both teams that just clash.
The wall of death. Two guys just running toward each other. Yeah, actually, I remember when I was a kid trying to convince my brother to run at each other full bore with our heads, and he was like, "No," and I was like, "But I saw it on X-Men." And of course, he's like, "I don't think that's not. No, we're not doing that.
We're not mutants."
That's
the problem.
Right. We won't bounce back from that, and it's going to hurt. That's all I've got. Unless you have anything else you want to add.
Rock on.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. This is Goblincast once again. This is Ryan.
This is Colin.
Check out our blog at goblincast.tumblr.com or my goofy SoundCloud, because everybody has a fucking SoundCloud. We'll probably have an episode next week up about probably a video game or something. Anyway, thanks a lot. Signing off.